The dialogue from The Rings of Power is an incoherent mess of poorly written lines that I'm honestly baffled to see on a project with such a large amount of money. It seems the writers have little to no experience in writing dialogue. Even the most recent entries in the MCU, which aren't the best to say the least, have characters speaking like actual human beings. There are two kinds of awful dialogue. Stories where the plot makes the dialogue sound stupid. When Poe says,
"Somehow Palpatine returned."
The average viewer's reaction is of course to hit their head on the nearest wall, but the line isn't to blame. It's the fact that the writers couldn't explain in 2 hours how Palpatine returned, so they chose to have an awful line instead of writing a good story in which no character would ever utter these words. And stories where a character says a poorly written lines that make the dialogue sound stupid because it actually is.
Was there anything else?
Yes. Your friend has arrived.
She is here. Why didn't you say so?
This is what I want to focus on for The Rings of Power. Anything that sounds awful because of the way the dialogue is written and not because of the story or a character. Don't get me wrong, there are many instances where a character says something silly because of the plot. When Elrond sings,
Rich crone, kiss the stone, polish your gems and go.
Because he hurt the kids, is terrible. The song is fine, but the reason he knows it is incredibly silly. It's a failure of the plot, not of the song. But in this video, I'm more interested in the kind of lines that makes me wonder what's going on inside the writers' minds. Any piece of information that cannot be found on the show doesn't exist. I should be given enough context to understand what the characters are saying. The Rings of Power is an impressive show, because the first 2 lines are wrong.
Nothing is evil in the beginning, and there was a time when the world was so young, there had not yet been a sunrise.
These 2 lines can't be next to each other, because they express 2 different ideas. Nothing is evil in the beginning. Our world is young, and hasn't even had a sunrise yet. The writer's use of the word "and" only make it worse. The lines are supposed to convey the idea that the world knows no evil, but a sentence is clearly missing between the 2. In contrast, the next 2 lines do fit together.
And there was a time when the world was so young, there had not yet been a sunrise, but even then, there was light.
There's no sun, but we have light. It works. Nothing is evil in the beginning. And the world is so young it doesn't have a sun. It doesn't work. And this is only the first few lines of the show.
Do you know why a ship floats and a stone cannot?
Now this is a fun one. The writers are trying to be actual authors. Let's see if they can pull it off.
Stone sees only downward. The darkness of the water is vast and irresistible. The ship feels the darkness as well, striving moment by moment to master her and pull her under. But the ship has a secret, for unlike the stone, her gaze is not downward but up, fixed upon the light that guides her.
While hearing this for the first time, I tried to stay open-minded. It's a different culture from mine, with its own beliefs and understandings of the world. Yet, being open-minded hasn't changed the fact this entire dialogue makes absolutely no sense. In the 3rd episode, one of the elves says,
This tree sprang from the earth long before you crawled from whatever wretched place you grew. It has earned its place in these lands.
This may sound silly, but it's a great line to depict Elvish culture. It's the same with this.
Resonating? I've not heard of resonating.
It's when we sing to the stone. You see, a mountain's like a person.
Elves like trees and dwarves like mountains. Going back to the ship and the rock speech, it doesn't work on every level. Number 1. Neither the ship nor the stone seem to represent Elvish culture. A stone is more commonly associated with the dwarves, and the elves don't seem too interested in ships. Just look at theirs compared to the Númenórean ones. Number 2. This world is subjected to the laws of physics. To build a ship, elves must understand the science behind it. Number 3. Why is the brother so rude to stones and so nice to ships? It sounds like the stones are evil and the darkness is bad, even though evil doesn't exist yet. Number 4. According to the brother, objects have different types of gaze. They either look up to float toward the light, or down to sink into the abyss. There's no grey area. Number 5. If the gaze of the ship is up, wouldn't it mean that she's trying to fly? Wouldn't forward makes more sense, since the light comes from a tree on the ground and not from the sun in the sky. We are not told how the lighting system works, so let's move on to number 6. The figure of speech is simply awful. The words ship and stone work in this context, but could be replaced with anything that floats and sinks, because it's actually not an analogy, but 2 random words put together. A carrot floats because it looks up, while a fat rabbit sinks because it looks down. Why the rabbit evil? I don't know. If the rabbit were to eat a lot of carrots, would it float? Maybe. But hold on, we're not even at the worst part yet. I could have forgiven the whole thing if it had stopped there. It would have been a nice scene of a brother telling a story to his little sister who lost a ship. But no, because somehow young Galadriel tries to identify with the ship. She's actually finding a meaning to this terrible story, and the brother who might have just said that to cheer her up has no choice but to go with it.
But sometimes, the lights shine just as brightly reflected in the water as they do in the sky. It's hard to say which way is up and which way is down. How am I to know which lights to follow?
We're told there's a good and a bad light to follow. Again, what have stones ever done to you, and how do you know about evil in Paradise Island? The writers had to butcher the opening by adding,
Nothing is evil in the beginning.
but it seems like darkness, stones, and water are evil. I'm confused. So I guess we're not talking about the science behind shipbuilding. We're not talking about swimming too, because it's easy to know which way is up. I think we're actually talking about making choices. I really don't know how we got there with such a start. I have no idea how kids throwing rocks at a ship turns into a conversation about finding the right path. Is it somehow related to her choice of beating up the kid? It doesn't work though. Anyway, sure, sometimes it's hard to determine the best course of action.
Sometimes we cannot know until we have touched the darkness.
But that seems so simple.
Is it simple? There are two kinds of choices in life that can lead to darkness. The ones that are bad and the ones that don't look bad. When faced with a choice that doesn't look bad, one would assume the lights shine as brightly reflected in the water as they do in the sky. If there's no way of knowing until you've tried, it's anything but simple, so the whole story is simply not helpful. What I think happened here is that the writers needed an answer from Galadriel that sounded mysterious and assumed nobody would notice, but when the lines are put together it sounds pretty bad. What I find amazing about this whole dialogue is that it's supposed to be really deep even though it actually isn't. You can't know your choice is bad until you see how bad it is. Really? That's crazy. Tell me again how we went from kids sinking a paper boat with a stone to talking about why one floats and one does not, to good and evil through personal choices. Let's skip to the end of the episode to see if this story made any sense.
Sometimes we cannot know until we have touched the darkness.
It's clear the part of the story about the ship and the stone had nothing to do with making a choice, because she is neither the ship nor the stone. She doesn't follow the same light as the ship, and she doesn't want to follow darkness like the stone. So let's ignore the first part and focus on her question about discerning good from evil. The light shines indeed as brightly in the water as it does in the sky, so she doesn't know what to do. And the whole story falls apart. The answer of the brother is fine, but it doesn't apply here. Where is the darkness? Going to paradise doesn't lead her to darkness, or are you telling me the world will perish without her? That sounds a bit much, and that wouldn't make her touch darkness. Going back to her life doesn't lead her to darkness. She would have to make more choices. What if she came back to be what she's always been?
My friend.
Let's say going back to her life leads to darkness because of the war. That doesn't make her touch darkness, right? Or is she touching darkness her whole life until she leaves at the end of Return of the King? That would be touching a lot of darkness. Is it dark to touch this random guy? It's crazy how it could mean nothing and everything, almost like it doesn't apply here. Darkness cannot be symbolized with suicide because she doesn't want to die, otherwise she wouldn't be swimming. Maybe going in the water is touching darkness. But that would be too simple, right? Wait, what's this?
Your captain here delivered us from certain death.
Did she admit that jumping from the ship in the middle of the ocean meant certain death? Then she did try to kill herself. She actually was a stone because she followed the darkness to drown herself. It all makes sense now. We can move on then. Sorry for wasting your time.
It's been years since the last orc was sighted. Is it not possible the other commanders are right, and our enemy is no more? Night is closing in. How long can living flesh endure where even sunlight fears to tread?
Now, I'm not sure why he says living flesh, but more importantly, I have no idea who he's referring to. The elves, the orcs, or both. It's a weird follow-up from the last line where he talks about orcs, and calling himself living flesh is quite unusual. Either way, it doesn't really make any sense because living flesh can survive without the sun, like for example trolls or dwarves or orcs or elves or people in Sweden. It's just a cool line that doesn't mean anything. If he's talking about orcs, then is he unaware that they hate sunlight? According to the show they have empires, maybe they would love it here. The elves are a bit out of place, but as long as they have food they should be fine. Swapping the lines would have made more sense, assuming of course that he's talking about elves.
It's been years since the last orc was sighted. Is it not possible the other commanders are right, and our enemy is no more? How long can living flesh endure where even sunlight fears to tread? Night is closing in. Perhaps we would be wise to camp here.
Now with only a couple of small fixes, the dialogue sounds more organic. There's no more enemies. This place is dangerous for us. We should stop because night is even colder. Assuming he's talking about orcs, he could have said,
It's been years since the last orc was sighted. How long can living flesh endure where even sunlight fears to tread? Is it not possible the other commanders are right, and our enemy is no more? Night is closing in. Perhaps we would be wise to camp here.
There's no more enemies and they can't survive here anyway. We should stop because night is dangerous to us elves. It's exactly that kind of thing that makes me believe the writers have a lack of experience. They could have fixed most of the dialogue in 5 minutes. The fact that it's not entirely clear who the living flesh is proves my point. I also want to mention these 2 lines.
Night is closing in. How long can living flesh endure where even sunlight fears to tread?
I mean, if you listen to it for what it is, it sounds like the sunlight fears to tread at night, right? Am I crazy here? We can clearly see the sunlight during the whole sequence, and unless this mountain uses some kind of magic, there should be sun here. Anyway, my point is that he should have mentioned the cold instead of the sunlight, but I guess sunlight sounds more elvish.
This is it. This is where the orcs gathered after Morgoth's defeat. Far more must have escaped than we ever imagined.
How do you know this is where the orcs gathered after Morgoth's defeat? How can you tell that many orcs escaped?
This place is so evil our torches give off no warmth.
Again, that sounds cool, but does it actually mean anything? Did Gollum froze to death when he fell in the lava? That tower next to Mount Doom was pretty evil. Maybe that's why he didn't catch fire.
This way.
How can you be certain?
It's colder than the rest.
Sure, I guess. So cold means evil. That's twice now. It's fair to assume that cold stands for evil then.
Even stone cannot hide the mark of one whose very hand is flame unquenched.
But now evil is compared to a flame, which is hot. Is evil cold or hot? It sounds nitpicky because it's not important to the story, but it should be to writers who know what they're doing. All I see are writers who forgot what they wrote 2 minutes ago. You can't compare something to cold twice and then to its exact opposite in the same scene. Pick one.
We should never have come in here.
Are you kidding me? This is the first time they found the mark since Galadriel's brother died centuries ago and no one cares? It makes sense for Thunder to be frustrated because they exceeded their orders months ago, but they've just found the place that nobody ever found and the mark no one has ever seen in centuries. It's a massive discovery. Finding the mark twice is a pattern. Either there's an actual danger and they must follow it, or it could be yet another sign that orcs are dead because the place is empty. It's fine that he wants to end the search here because they have orders, but it makes absolutely no sense to make him say that. Finding this kind of place is the whole point of their journey, and it's not like someone died or anything.
Was there anything else?
Yes, your friend has arrived.
She's here. Why didn't you say so?
Do I even have to say anything here? Is it some kind of joke? She literally told him 20 seconds into the conversation. This whole dialogue makes Elrond look stupid. He should have said instead, "She's here. Why didn't you lead with that?" To show that Galadriel is more important to him than having its access to the next council session removed.
Are you just going to stand there breathing like an orc?
So Galadriel, the woman who dedicated her entire life to slaying orcs and who is always serious about it, says her friend looks like an orc. I know the writers are trying to make a joke, but it's not funny nor clever. He wasn't breathing like an orc. We've not even seen orcs yet. Do they breathe in a different way? If I were to say, "Are you going to stand there breathing like a hobbit?" would it make me sound like a funny guy? Please tell me. The goal is to make Galadriel more likable, but the joke is so terrible it makes her look like a jerk.
But you have not seen what I've seen.
I have seen my share.
You have not seen what I have seen.
This exchange is a bit confusing to me because we are not given any background on Galadriel. What has she seen that's so terrible? Was she on the battlefield? Many elves were on the battlefield, so what is she referring to? She hunted the remnant of Morgoth's army for centuries. Did she see something there? We are told chasing orcs is pointless, that they haven't found anything and they don't even see orcs anymore. Then does she have visions? Again, what has she witnessed that is so horrifying? Instead of having possibly the most important piece of dialogue to flesh out Galadriel's character, the writers decided to have her say, "Trust me bro," not once, but twice. I cannot overstate how poorly executed this whole scene is. We're told that the stakes are insanely high, but we're not shown or hinted at anything. This is not how you get your audience engaged. Repeating the same line twice doesn't make me want to anyway.
You say I have won victory over all the horrors of Middle-earth, yet you would leave them alive in me, to take with me.
Once again, I'm at a loss. Is she saying her only way out is death? Is that why she jumps in the middle of the ocean later in the episode? Wouldn't her PTSD get cured in the land of winterless spring? We get no information on what kind of horrors live inside her. Does it mean that if she were to find and kill Sauron, she would still feel bad? It's impossible to assume anything beyond what is told by the character, because a lot of information is missing. It would have been great to see more of Galadriel in the prologue instead of "a ship floats."
Without it, what am I to be?
What you have always been. My friend.
Galadriel would stop hunting orcs after centuries just to be friends with Elrond, something she already is anyway. Why is Elrond asking her to be his friend if he wants her to go to the land of winterless spring? If she leaves, they won't be together, and if she stays, she won't heal her broken spirit. We're not told what this paradise of them is, but somehow I doubt she needs to become someone other than herself in the afterlife. It's not like they need plumbers over there. Without it, what am I to be? Should have been answered with something similar to this. You will find yourself again in the Blessed Realm. Only after saying something actually helpful to her can he add a line about friendship if the writers really need to. Lucky for everyone, the scene ends here, because anything she says would make Elrond sound even dumber.
The lot you lump us in with died off 1,000 years ago. When are you people gonna let the past go?
Past is with us all, whether we like it or not.
Here the writers are unable to convey their message, so they have the elf say something cool that does a poor job at it. What the writers mean to say is that the hearts of men can easily be corrupted. Humans are a mortal race. The men who sided with Morgoth died at least 20 generations ago. Should I feel responsible for what good and bad deeds my ancestors did 500 years ago? No. Would I have the same mindset as people from 500 years ago? No. It's not that the past is with them, it's that their ability to be corrupted by evil remains. The lines spoken by the elf make it sound like he hates humans because their ancestors were bad.
The blood of those who stood with Morgoth still darkens their veins.
That was long ago, Watchwood.
It's an interesting scene that could show how this elf is actually brainwashed into believing that humans are bad, but it sounds like he's contradicting himself with his previous statement in the tavern, and the one later with the woman. Is the past not with us all now? If the writers are trying to set up an arc to make him more tolerant, then a poor job is done so far. I'm not sure how the Watchwarden figured that humans are still evil. There's no rings of power yet, and some of the humans did help during the war. If they sided with Morgoth, it might be because they weren't living in Paradise Island like the elves, and not because men are evil in nature. Maybe elves could help humans instead of watching over them for 1,000 years for no reason. Why are they here watching over a small town anyway?
But for 79 years you've kept watch over the men and women of Tir Harad, not because of what their ancestors once did, but because of who they still are.
If the people of Tir Harad are a constant threat, why would they leave? Are they unable to turn evil without Sauron? It took not one, not two, but 3 attempts for the writers to convey their message about human nature. We got it, thank you. We're not as dumb as the characters of this show.
The people of Húrin were known for having been especially strong in the loyalty to Morgoth.
So the past is with us all, the past was long ago, and now the past matters again. That guy seems conflicted. Shortly after, we get a shot of the whole town. I'm being generous here, there's like 30 houses. How would anyone know what a town so small was doing during World War? Sure, the town may have gotten smaller since the war, but it doesn't look like there was a city here. There's no way the townfolk of Húrin had a major role, or were a threat during the war.
What did you just say?
The truth.
Using terms like
past, the truth,
really does make me believe this guy hates humans.
I'm talking about my friends. Close kin. I know them. There are good people there.
He is, but more importantly, he's talking about you. The writers didn't address it in the dialogue to hide how terrible the scene is.
That is why I'm here with you, instead of the Watchwood. Bronwyn. The only kind touch I've known all my days.
That's how the writers try to make me believe the elf is not bigoted toward humans by having him whisper meaningless words in her ear. The way the dialogue is written is incredibly silly. The guy makes a comment about how evil the people of Horden were for no reason whatsoever, doesn't care she's offended, and proceeds to flirt with her. Why is the elf so rude to the woman, only to flirt with her 5 seconds later? Is it a secret elvish tactic to get laid? Is he here because he loves her, or because he agreed there are good people there? Why would he say they were famous for being evil in the first place if he doesn't agree? Why is the woman letting him talk to her like that? Why should he be here any more than the Watchwarden? Is the Watchwarden hurting humans? The fact that we end up with more questions than answers on such a basic interaction between two people just shows how terrible the dialogue is.
I think you talk too much. And you smell of rotten leaves.
No, I don't.
Yes, you do.
The writers have outdone themselves here. After the breathing like an orc joke, we get a no I don't yes you do funny moment. I'm now convinced they can't write jokes. Elves of this show are too awkward to be funny anyway.
Oh, quick, go! Faster before it crashes! So now you care about it! No, the wheelbarrow is not fun!
Yeah, your joke. Pushing something up a hill and letting it roll back down. Never heard of that one before. But the writers are really funny, so they decided to enhance the joke with a couple of lines. There's 2 issues besides the joke itself. It's unlikely someone would say that while watching a wheelbarrow with someone on falling down a hill. So now you care about him? Yes. Why not? He's falling to his death. There is a difference between refusing to help a stranger that could die alone and helping someone you end up killing. She decided to help Nori. The man is her responsibility now whether she likes it or not. She should care because his death would be her fault too. Wait, there's a twist of the plot. She actually cares about the wheelbarrow, not the man. I see. Well, now we know Nori's friend is a horrible person. Stop making jokes that hurt your characters.
Men did not do this.
How do you know? I mean, it's unlikely, but they could. In the next episode, human slaves are the one digging.
I must follow the passage the other direction.
You don't know what's down there.
That is the reason I must go.
This whole scene is surreal, but to be fair, the issue mainly comes from the plot and that's not what the video is about. Still, the dialogue could have been improved, to give more reasons for scuffed Sherlock to jump in the hole. What is said can be translated into, why don't you call your friends? There could be 500 orcs ready to kill you. Which, I mean, is the opposite of why you should go. Maybe he wants to die too, like Galadriel.
Morgoth found the Silmarils so beautiful that after he'd stolen them, for weeks he could do nothing but stare into their depths. It was only after one of his tears fell upon the jewels and he was faced with the evil of his own reflection that the reverie was finally broken.
That's a cute story, but it's pointless. I've skipped over most of the dialogue where the writers try to sound like a book, because nothing I say would make the lines look worse than they already do. But I want to show how we are wasting time on stupid lines that don't move the story or the characters forward. What are the Silmarils? Why did he steal them? Where are they now? Does Morgoth regret what he did? Does he hate himself? Could he be redeemed? His reflection is evil. Sounds like a bad guy. We've learned nothing from all this, though it seems like something cool happened here. Maybe we'll get a prequel to the prequel of the prequel to the original trilogy. Can't wait.
An age ago, our kind brought war to these shores.
Did you? You didn't start the war, and to end it you had to go to Middle-earth. It'd be swell if we could get more information.
An elf?
Remove your hand from me, sir.
You liar.
That does not fit at all with what happened. No actual character would say this. She didn't lie. She should have said, "You tricked me," to imply deceit or malintent, something the character could reasonably have assumed.
You might at least listen to the proposal I bring.
Ah, there it is. The true purpose of your visit. You want something.
I journeyed here to see my friend whom I've greatly missed.
No, he journeyed here because he wants something, not to see his friend. Is it intended by the writers to make Elrond look like a liar? He said to Durin's face he had a proposal. Is it intended by the writers to have Elrond be manipulative too?
You missed my wedding. The birth of my children, 2 of them. 20 years may be the blink of an eye to an elf. But I've lived an entire life in that time.
Now I know I'm cheating here because the show hasn't told us, but dwarves live for about 250 years. For such a long life expectancy, it would be as if Elrond hadn't seen a human in 6.5 years. I don't think it's too bad, and especially not coming from an immortal being who lives far away.
A life you missed.
Seems way over the top. But alright, let's say I don't know how many years dwarves can live. I have some questions. Did Elrond receive any news from Durin? It's not mentioned. If he did, has Elrond ignored Durin's invitations? Was Elrond away on a mission for years and couldn't get in touch? It could happen for a race that doesn't age. If Elrond didn't receive anything, how could he have known about any of this? Even if he visited once a year, how would he know about the wedding, which is a fixed date? Can dwarves and elves even communicate at all? Once again, this is a conversation with no context, and it's up to the viewer to guess what happened. Is Elrond a bad friend, Durin an idiot, or is it more complicated than that? This would have been great to explore and to see some actual character development on screen. I'm getting tired of having the story fed to me through hearsay, don't show but tell, and other methods that demonstrate a complete and utter lack of ability in the writing department. After all, the best place to hide a stupid plot is behind the camera.
You're staying for dinner.
He's leaving.
He's staying.
He's leaving.
He's staying.
And we're back with some comedy. After no I don't yes you do funny moment, the writers got ambitious and created a yes no yes clever back and forth. Saying the same word several times is not funny, but then they keep using it when the joke is over and it sounds like it's just poorly written. Staying. Okay, end of the joke. But oh no, the next two lines use the word stay as well.
I told you to stay out of my head.
I told you monsters to stay in bed.
Did the writers run out of vocabulary on a show based on the works of Tolkien?
I have asked for nothing but your ear.
Aye, and that's how it starts. Elves for elves, no.
Has it ever been so between us?
I don't know. Has it?
Owlie's beard.
Context, please. The whole dialogue is entirely pointless, could be removed and wouldn't change a thing. I've seen a bunch of comments praising the storyline with the dwarves, when in reality it's just empty platitude thrown at the screen. Not one viewer understands what he's alluding to, and even Elrond is confused.
I don't know. Has it?
Owlie's beard.
It's just here for fake drama. No, it has not. What are you trying to start here? Are you a dumb and petty dwarf? Is that why you didn't visit Elrond in 20 years? It goes both ways, you know.
I saw a tunnel, dug deep and with care. By what, I cannot say, but they were digging towards us.
So she knows it's dug deep with care and toward them. Who gave us a script?
It's not poison. Not for humans, anyway.
And that's another joke that makes no sense. I don't believe a poison lethal to elves wouldn't harm humans at all. Why not have him say, not my plate anyway? It would imply their saviors are humans who might hate elves. The joke would then work because it would make it reasonably plausible. But then again, the people on the ship could have killed her while she was unconscious.
What vessel is this? To what port do we sail?
Nearly where? What is this place?
This is so frustrating to have not one but two characters repeating the same question 4 times hoping to get an answer. Just stop, please. But at the same time, why is Elendil not telling them? Well, I know why. To get cool trailer lines.
Home.
The land of the star. The westernmost of all mortal realms. The island kingdom of Numenor.
This is not a believable conversation. Either tell them where they are, or if the writers really want the cool trailer lines, have them come out on the bridge when someone yells, "We're home." It will sound more genuine.
Since when did men like me build kingdoms such as this?
These men are not like you.
Well, that was not too subtle. How convenient it is for him to say men like me. It sounds like the perfect opportunity for Galadriel to explain the history of the world.
They paid for this isle with the blood of their kin.
What the elf means.
Then if blood be the price of passage, I will pay it.
What are you talking about? Are you saying you want to kill yourself to get a ship? The Queen is talking about the island, not how to get a boat. It's the favorite literary device of the writers of this show, to have a character repeat a word used in the previous line, but in a way that makes no sense. It's a clever writing tool when you know what you're doing.
You fool. No man can kill me.
I am no man.
The Queen said blood, so I'm gonna say blood too in my punchline, even though it has nothing to do with what she said.
I welcome you to try.
I have no need of your welcome.
And again, she did not welcome you. Are you trying to be clever? Parroting what the Queen says really makes you look like a smart elf.
I have no need of your welcome.
And you are quickly wearing out yours.
And the queen starts doing the same thing. What is happening? You didn't welcome her in the first place. There's nothing to wear out. You were talking about a ship.
It seems to me that our leaving presents some complications. Perhaps it'd be better if we stay, to give you and your advisors adequate time to weigh our request. A few days, perhaps.
3 days.
This scene might have the worst dialogue in the entire show. Galadriel acting like a 15 years old in front of a queen to further the plot. Multiple punchlines that have nothing to do with what was said, a lack of information, and nonsense all around.
It seems to me that our leaving presents some complications.
What complication is Halbrand referring to? Do they really need to weigh on this? Either they shoot her in the face, or they give her a boat. What's so hard?
A few days, perhaps.
Galadriel was rude to the queen the entire time. Why would they grant 2 days?
To give you and your advisors adequate time to weigh our request.
The request has already been denied. What have Halbrand and Galadriel said that would change her mind? Why is Halbrand saying that and not Pharazôn? It's not like he pleaded or begged. He just tried to reason with her like an advisor would. How come a random guy is allowed to speak like this? And why does everyone listen to him? Why is the queen turning to Pharazôn? Is she a queen or a committee?
3 days.
Why is Pharazôn offering more than what Halbrand asked for? It doesn't look like Pharazôn has any interest in this. No foreshadowing to be seen. This scene represents everything that's wrong with the dialogue of the show. An entire scene falls apart when it relies solely on the dialogue. It's in no way a failure of the plot or of the characters. It's a basic scene with 2 people asking help from a queen. How can the writers mess it up?
You really expect me to leap with you back into the furnace?
You leapt into the sea to save one life.
A character repeating the same word that the person they're talking to used, in a way that makes no sense. Where have I seen that before? What does saving one life in the middle of the ocean has to do with joining a war? One is easy with little to no consequence, the other is not. Saving someone from drowning won't make me want to join a war. Maybe I'm the only one thinking that way, or maybe the dialogue is simply stupid. I would bet on the latter.
In my experience, it is unwise to live one's life guessing after signs and portents. It was the sea that put her in my path, and the sea is always right.
A bit of a contradiction there.
I'm obliged to deliver you safely to my betters. They will answer your questions, not I.
And yet, though elves have been unwelcome on our shores since the reign of my grandfather's great-grandfather, you chose to break that precedent.
That's another contradiction. Has anyone paid attention when Elendil was written?
They're searching for something. Some sort of weapon, perhaps.
The way they're digging doesn't look like it. Their first and only guess as to what the orcs are doing is correct. These elves are pretty smart. I'm sure they'll come up with a plan that definitely won't get them killed.
We lost the war.
And it was mine who started it. And together we will redeem both our bloodlines.
Your family started the war? Again with the guilt? What are you trying to redeem? I have no idea what you're talking about. It could add depth to your actions if you explained.
An age ago, our kind brought war to these shores.
What about Morgoth destroying the tree? Are the elves the bad guys?
All I see is an elf who won't put down her sword.
Even if this guy were actually evil, it makes no sense for him to say that after giving her the location of the orcs. It's just a desperate attempt to echo with what Elrond said in the first episode.
Put up your sword.
It's a line for the viewers.
You vex me, elf. I welcome you as a guest, and you gallop off to our countryside to steal ancient scrolls.
Oh god, she said welcome again. This is entirely wrong. Elendil is responsible for her. He's the one who provided the horse and led her there. Why is it not addressed? Is it to build fake drama between Galadriel and the Queen? The guy brought an illegal alien to Númenor that will destroy the city, got promoted, and decided to send her on a trip to the archives to steal ancient scrolls. The Queen looks like a fool.
And fight with me to save the men of the Southlands before Sauron claims their lands for his own.
In this court we hear many proposals. I dare say yours is the most surprising and ambitious I've heard in weeks.
Weeks? Really? I have a hard time believing that a people who hates elves and consider Southlanders as subhumans would hear a crazier proposal. So I have no proof, but trust me, Sauron is back and we need you to build an army and join elves and humans that you hate in battle. I'm not an elvish ambassador, by the way. They all hate me and we have no army yet too. Sure, maybe it's not that ambitious an idea, but at the very least it has to be surprising, right? Why not say, in this court we hear many ambitious proposals. I dare say yours is the most surprising I've heard since my father lost his crown. The idea that Númenóreans are an ambitious people is kept, but instead of making her proposal seem trivial, it now stands out. It reminds the viewer as well that the previous king was an elf friend.
This audience is ended.
Then I have little choice but to ask for another, one with Númenor's true ruler. Your father, the king. And you should stand aside, that I might present my proposal to one who holds the authority to answer it.
But he does not. The king is not king anymore. They are trying so hard to build tension between the two. There might be value in speaking with the old king, but her entire argument makes no sense. I really am amazed at the writer's ability to fail at creating a simple conversation like this one. Anyone could have found better reasons for her to see the king that don't involve her saying,
Númenor's true ruler. You should stand aside.
Once again, Galadriel looks like an idiot.
And with what authority do you speak, elf? That of your people? Or are you a castaway, grasping for a handhold in a tempest?
There is a tempest in me!
What am I watching here? Will you ever stop repeating words you hear, please? I beg you. The queen doesn't care about what's inside you. That's not what she's asking. I'm glad you finally revealed to everyone that you're insane. It's just too bad you jumped off that ship.
You know, Disa, there is no secret worth concealing with deception.
That's just an unfortunate choice of words. It sounds clever, but it isn't. Most secrets have to be concealed with deception, otherwise people will wonder what it is. When your wife asks why you're coming home so late, tell her it's a secret. You'll never guess what happens next. Sometimes it is indeed possible to be honest about having a secret, for example on a sensitive topic, because no one will ask. Other than that, people will ask until they get mad. The goal of Elrond is to find out what's going on with Durin. If Disa says she can tell because it's a secret, will Elrond just leave and tell his boss, "All is fine, it's a secret though, so I don't actually know anything"? No. The writers want us to believe that Elrond, the elf that lies and manipulates his friend and the wife of his friend, is actually a righteous man. Or maybe Elrond doesn't like secrets and will reveal anything to Sauron, because there's no secrets worth concealing with deception, right? I sure hope Durin doesn't tell him about Mithril.
If Durin is mining quartz, why would he leave without taking his chiseling axe? And why would you be preparing his favorite meal if he's gone to a chasm that takes 2 full days to descend to?
In other words, I know how dwarves work, and I know my friend's favorite meal. Can you tell we're friends now?
So you really did come all this way just for an egg here?
I came because 20 years is far too long to stay away.
Again with the lies and the same old drama? Yes, you guys haven't seen one another in 20 years. I'm in tears. I know the show tells me you are friends, I just don't believe it. Elrond investigated Durin's behavior by interrogating the wife of his friend, proceeded to spy on the both of them, and then pretended he went inside the secret mineshaft because 20 years is far too long to stay away. Almost sounds like they're not friends.
Now, all of a sudden she throws you in a cell. Why?
I asked her to fight for your people.
But that wasn't what provoked her anger, was it?
The way the dialogue is written in this whole sequence feels like Galadriel is a 12-year-old moron listening to her daddy. I do not understand why she has to start her journey towards wisdom at the very bottom. I guess the writers are unable to build a proper character arc with subtle and complex nuances, so they had her start unfathomably low to trick the viewer into believing that she's growing, when in reality all she learned so far is basic decency.
I wouldn't advise that.
I can't very well let her leave.
You could, if you knew exactly where she was going.
I am baffled by such a statement. No, he couldn't let a prisoner wander off, and especially not if he knew she was about to undermine the Queen's authority.
Does it ever occur to you that you're not battling trolls or orcs, but men?
Are you really about to advise me in the art of war?
My god, it was a figure of speech. It's not an actual battlefield.
As much as I admire your habit of charging at every obstacle in your path like a colt in full gallop, see what happens when you stop galloping and you give yourself a moment to think.
Cease comparing me to a horse.
Alright, that's it. Galadriel is a moron. She's taking everything literally. I didn't think it was possible to turn a character into such a fool in one scene. I guess the writers are actually talented, otherwise they wouldn't have pulled this off. 3 seasons from now, remember that her journey to wisdom started inside a cell where she was told about being nice to people and compared to a horse. Alright, I'm done. I skipped over the Harfoots because I couldn't bother, and many other issues like member berries.
I will cut it down!
Trailer lines.
Have you heard of him, lad? Have you heard of Sauron?
Lyrics.
Nobody goes off train. 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 Nobody goes off train.
And expository dialogue.
You know the rules. We're not supposed to be out this far.
Maybe you ought to stick closer to home. That way you don't miss anything.
And what concern is that of yours, Eleanor Brandyfoot?
Eleanor Brandyfoot, with your father's nose and always poking us into trouble. You are far too curious and meddlesome to have been born a Harford.
She's making that face, not that face, Nori.
Why are you doing this, Nori?
You feel like everyone is your responsibility.
No! Why is it your problem? What sense did sticking your neck out for him any more than you already have?
And we got Nori. No. Look, once that girl puts her head to something, nothing can stop her.
Ever has your heart been like your father's?
The writers of the Rings of Power love to show and tell, but most importantly they love to not show and tell. There is either too much information because the writers think the audience is too stupid, or too little information to understand the story and make it believable. The number of times I am left wondering why something is happening in a scene is baffling. There's a huge difference between dialogue that doesn't reveal everything, with multiple layers only fans of the book will notice, and dialogue that doesn't reveal anything with no layers, leaving the viewer confused. Fans cannot even rely on the books because I'm pretty sure Amazon does whatever they want with the lore. Funny thing is, nothing crazy happens on the show. It's just that two characters are talking and the viewer has to trust the writers or guess every bit of context around the scene. What led this character to act this way? What is their goal, their feelings, and their relationship to other characters or major plot points? We're told Elrond and Galadriel are friends. I don't think they are. The writers say they're friends, but they didn't show that to me. We are told Elrond and Durin are friends. I don't think they are. The writers say they're friends, but they didn't show that to me. I just don't believe you. I guess the writers don't see what I see. Petty squabblings and lies. Notice how simple it is to explain what I've seen? So there's this lack of context, and then on top of that the dialogue often goes from point A to point C without going over B. Characters start saying random lines that don't fit with the previous one, as if the characters do not listen to one another. Sometimes they obviously do, when they repeat a word used in the previous line, but somehow it makes even less sense. I feel like the writers know where they want to go, but have no idea on how to get there. That's why the characters are spewing out so much nonsense. It's the only way for the writers to move the plot forward. How can we put Galadriel in jail? Instead of arresting her for leaving the palace grounds, why not have her say random lines at the Queen until she gets mad? How can we force Galadriel to stay in Numenor? Instead of any reason that would be better, why not have her say random lines at the Queen, so that instead of leaving Numenor immediately on a ship, she will have to stay for 3 days? The nonsense, lack of context, poor choice of words, the terrible jokes, and the characters who know things they should not. All of this turns the characters and the story into an awful mess. The characters are either stupid or unbearable, and it makes the plot feel even worse than it already is. It's just baffling that a story based on the works of Tolkien has worse dialogue than most content with a budget over $10.